Hi everyone, this is Martha. I'm a relationship counselor and clinical sexologist. This is Sugar and Spice Community Sharing. And today our theme is coming out. So like coming out in any way. So in community sharing, we just share our personal stories. There's not like any real like lecture or whatever. It's more informal kind of thing. And so everybody here is aware that we are recording the session and putting it online. So yes, so anybody wants to go ahead and share your coming out story, whatever that means for you.
Nish, would you like to would you like us to go first or?
Yeah, I guess I can go first. My coming out story, okay. So, I think I'm gonna speak from the perspective like coming out as like a gay man. So, I think there's different levels, different layers to it. But I think when I first came out, I think I came out to my friends first. I feel like I've always knew, so it wasn't ever a surprise for me. So I didn't really, come out to myself first. But I came out to my friends first. It was during class. It was during class. It was food and nutrition, I remember. And then like I told my friends around me, I was like, guys, I think I'm bi. So I started off saying that I'm bi first because like that's like the transition, right? So and everybody else was like, we all knew about it. So it wasn't it was nice lah. It was nice of them to be really chill about it, and it's always been like that. I feel like I've always been very out and bombastic. So I feel like people already kind of know before they even know me personally. So I don't really get to say and like come out verbally to people very often. But so now I've also come out to my family, but and by family I mean my mom. So that one was a bit different. Okay, it was a bit different because so we were I was 16 years old. So I don't know how long ago that was. So we were 16 years old. We were in the kitchen and everyone else was in the living room. So then up to that point, I've always wanted to tell her. I've always wanted to let her know, but it just never came out. Suddenly the words flew out of my mouth without me controlling it. I was like, Ma, I don't like girls, right? It just flew out. I was like, what? I had no control over it. And she was like, what do you mean you don't like girls? And I was like, I'm gay. Then there was this weird pause. She just stared at me like that. And it was like the first time that I saw that my mom didn't recognize me. It was the first time that she's looked at me that way. And then she was like, oh, do you want to go for counseling? Like, oh no, you're not gay, that's not my son, it was all of this stuff being said. And I was like, no, I am, And then she said, tell me what you said was a lie. Like she kept saying that. Then I couldn't take it anymore. I went into my room. And this went on for several days. She just kept saying, tell me what you said was a lie, which was the most horrible, dark. It was very, very heart-wrenching to hear her say that. Because like that was my most truest self that I could ever say to her. So it went on for several days. And I think on the third day, she said it again. She was like, tell me what you said was a lie. And I was like, yeah, it was a lie. I'm kidding. So it was just a joke. And she was like, oh, it's good lie. No, I know my son is not like that. I was like, yikes. So I guess that's my coming out story lah. In a way. I think there's going to be a point in time where I'm going to have to come out to her again, reopen the trauma, and be like, hey, remember that time I said I was gay? I was just kidding. So yeah, I guess that's my coming out story lah.
And thank you for sharing, Nish.
Question. Couldn't they see that coming? Why were they surprised?
Who was surprised?
Your family and friends.
So
Did they
my
not
friend,
suspect that you were gay?
okay, so my friends were not surprised. None of them were. So that was nice. Up from secondary school up until like poly, none of my friends are ever surprised. But my mom, I wouldn't. The only family I've come out to is my mom, and I wouldn't say that she was surprised. She was just shocked. Like it was news that she never wanted to hear also. And I also feel like I don't have to come up to my siblings. Siblings is one thing because I was openly gay in secondary school. Everybody in the whole cohort knew, and like I was the one gay cohort. Everybody knew, and the thing about neighborhood schools is news spreads like wildfire. And my older brother was in the same school as I was. When I was in secondary 1, he was in secondary 3, so he would know, but he doesn't see anything. It's a very don't ask, don't tell, don't see anything kind of a household lah. Yeah, so yeah, no surprise. It was just more of like, oh my god, what do you say? No, don't lie. Yeah, that kind of thing.
I mean, there's a reason I asked, because my cousin also is gay, my first cousin, and it wasn't a big secret. I mean, he was feminine, right? I mean, he's not super gay, but you can tell he's a bit feminine. So one day he decided to come out, right, just as you did, and he felt it necessary to address it personally to all his family and to his cousins, me being one of them. And he brought me aside and said, Lala, I got something to tell you. I said, what is it, Clinton? He said, I'm gay. And I said to him, no shit. This is what I mean, no shit. I mean, did you not think that people suspected you were gay? And he says to me, oh, that's such a relief that you are taking it so well. I said, what do you mean by taking it so well? You mean, you don't mind that I'm gay? So why would I mind that you're gay? If you're gay, you're gay. It's you. And it felt as though like he had a weight lifted off his shoulders because people were accepting of it, right? Perhaps maybe it was very different when he tried to explain it to his parents, right? Maybe similar with your experience, but he was very relieved that he didn't have that same obstacle when he was needing to break the news to his cousins who were more accepting. I guess, it's a different generation, and, you come to accept these things, right? So I don't know whether you felt as well when you broke the news that intergenerational differences played a part. You found that the previous generation was not as accepting.
Yeah, I guess the burden being lifted was more with my friend's situation, but I think with my mom, it's like there was no burden that was lifted. I feel like it was more of added to my shoulders. So it really is a whole, yeah, it's a whole, yeah, it's just a whole thing lah. Yeah.
I mean, how did you feel after explaining it to your mom?
I cried. I cried for a long time. I cried for several days. But there was a part of me that felt relieved that I got it out of my system. Yeah, it was like, okay, I said it. So that's like a first step, But it like then it felt like another step backwards. So yeah.
Okay, no, that's great.
Thanks for sharing, Nish. It's actually a very difficult experience, and then no one wants to confront this moment, right? No one wants to confront this moment where the parents are unable to accept, and for days unable to accept. It kept going on, and it actually becomes a permanent wound that keeps reopening every time the topic comes back up. Right, so it's a difficult experience. I think we need to acknowledge that, and you're super brave for going through this entire experience. But I guess I'm also curious to ask. I mean, I'll share my story first, and then maybe I'll ask my question later lah. I think my experience has been a bit different from Nish in the sense that I don't think I have a coming out moment actually. Like for me it was mostly just my friends, right? It's in like for context, like I came from a background in school where my co-curricular activity discussed the topic of LGBTQ matters since I was an early age, like since I was at 13 or 14. So as in I was exposed to the topic quite early on. I never really rejected the possibility, but I think I also never really accepted the possibility of myself identifying as part of the LGBTQ plus community only until the later stages of my current life lah, right? So um fast forward when I started dating, right, it wasn't as if I came out to my friends in like, oh, I'm not straight. It was more like oh, this is my partner. And then so usually it's a double coming out, right? So for me it's always been a double coming out. It's always been a, oh, you're attached. Oh, it is not a girl. Right? So I mean, for the people that I have come out to in that sense, as in that's been experience. And then for others, as in like there was just never a formal coming out moment because I just didn't believe in it. To me, like it's almost a sense of like if I have to come out, I think we're not forward enough. If I have to come out, you guys probably haven't accepted me enough. Right? I mean, it's just a matter of who I'm dating. It's not a matter of whether this person has a dick or not. Right? So I mean, that's kind of been my experience, like in the sense that like I actually never came out in that conventional sense. The only person that I properly came out to, I think, is myself. Because I think at least until after national service, I never really allowed myself to believe that I could date guys, I could be with guys, I could be attracted to guys, right? So I think that was something that I had to negotiate with for the longest time until I went overseas. I had an environment where I could restart. I met really, really wonderful friends who I'm with right now, who were able to tell me that it's fine, it's okay to go and explore and understand yourself a little better. And then from there, I'm kind of just meeting the right people, right? I mean, my partner, right? So I mean, um, yeah, it's just a lot of negotiating with myself more than anything else, and I don't think I had properly come out to anybody until except myself lah. Yeah, which I guess also comes to my question, which I wanted to ask just now, Nish, or anyone could also feel free to answer. But I wonder what's coming out. What is coming out to you? I think that's something that we never actually talked about. So I mean, anyone can take on the baton, but I'm wondering like, yeah, what do you all think coming out entails?
Okay, I think for me, coming out is essentially is um hmm hmm okay,
It's a
so
difficult question.
yeah, it's a good question. So I guess when I say coming out to myself, it's being true to myself. When I say coming out to my friends, I mean showing another layer of me. Um, when I say coming out to my family, is showing the true me. So I guess when it comes to coming out to different people, for me, it's different meanings for me. Yeah, that's just my answer lah.
Definitely. Oh, Darth Vader or Dr. Master, if you have any
Yeah, I
thoughts
mean,
as well, as in what does coming out mean?
for me personally, coming out is no longer being in denial, right? Or trying to believe that situation is not what it really is. And I guess that's a sort of a lead-in to my coming out story, which is about my divorce, right? I think it was probably as hard as the experiences that you guys had, coming out as being gay, right? Or being different, because I guess my family is very conventional in the sense that I'm the youngest of three siblings, and both my older siblings are married, and been married for many years. And the first people that I told about my divorce were my parents, and I think by nature, I'm like that. I like to tackle the hardest obstacle first, and then work my way down to the the less challenging ones. But surprisingly, I think my parents let me off quite easily. I knew that they were somewhat disappointed, but they were not disappointed in me. They were disappointed about my situation, but not in me. They rather thought that I was just very unfortunate to have such an outcome. You know, after 16 years of marriage, getting a divorce, I guess they couldn't believe it either. But it's not as though they didn't see it coming. I think it was, you know, over a few years, they did see that this was going to be the outcome. So, you know, once I told my parents, I felt more confident, right? I felt that I was no longer in denial, you know, as I mentioned earlier, and I had more courage to share it with others, you know. So the next one that I tackled was my best friend. I told him next, but you know, both my parents and my best friend are in Australia, so you know they couldn't really be there with me and for me. And then I started telling the friends that were around me, and when I did, I thought it was a fantastic idea, and I was really glad that I did, because I then had a support group, right? Instead of thinking, oh, initially I thought that, you know, my friends would disown me even, or you know, think me unworthy of their presence. But in fact, it was such a blessing, because they were really there to take me through the hardest time of my divorce. You know, I was pretty depressed for a few weeks, but they got me through. And I was very happy about that. So I'm really glad that I came out in that way. By sharing with others, I had a huge support group, and nobody was disappointed with me. Everybody was encouraging me to move on. You know, so that was my good news coming out. I guess, you know, I'm glad that I did it.
Definitely, definitely. It's definitely just as valid as any other coming out stories. I think there's this natural association we tend to think about coming out as in terms of sexual orientation, but I think there's so many things that we can come out to. And I think even that divorce story that you just shared, Dafida, is one that really require a lot of like courage to take the first step to actually share to your family and then your friends. And in some ways, I guess I hear that story of like social support that's so important that I
Yeah.
think a lot of us are pursuing when we actually come out, right? A lot of times we are sharing this piece of information because we really want to and hope for the acceptance of other people, so that they're actually actually better able to be supported, but also better able to live our true self in front of them. Definitely. Dr. Martha, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yes,
Coming up.
so I just want to welcome our newcomer. So just to say that we are recording the session with consent, and we might be sharing snippets of it online on social media. Okay, so feel free to rename yourself if you prefer. And so the question is, like, what does coming out mean to you? What's your coming out story? So SY and Nish already shared just now. So I actually looked up what does coming out mean online. And basically a lot of times coming out is coming out of the closet, shortened to coming out. So it's used to describe the LGBTs people's self-disclosure on their sexual orientation, romantic interest, orientation, or their gender identity. But it is also coming out can also mean like telling someone something about yourself that's not immediately obvious. So I think people who identify as heterosexuals have a privilege because we are in the majority, and so there's this assumption and it shouldn't be the case that everybody is heterosexual. So if you ask a heterosexual, when did you come out? I think a lot of heterosexuals will be like, what do you mean? But this was a sensitization exercise that we had to go through when I was in sex school, where we were asked like, when did you come out to your parents? When did you come out to your friends? And there is this heterosexual privilege that I have to say, you know, if you just go through life as the majority, you might take things for granted. So for myself, when it comes to, I guess for this session, that my coming out story is, you know, like coming out as a sexologist. And being a bit like, I don't know what you want to call it, blindsided, because I didn't know what to expect, but I also didn't expect the amount of attention and the extent of sexual harassment that I got. So for the first 2 years when I started my practice, I was quite I was really, really affected, even traumatized by it. People like calling me all hours of the night. Of course, not all the time, but when they did that, like 2 a.m. or whatever, like it was really like very traumatic, to the point that I just stopped. I made a decision to stop like answering the phone calls like after 8 p.m. Um, like people like breathing, heavily on the phones, or people trying to bait you to chat with them. So it wasn't easy, and so I think it created an aversion even to this date for me to pick up the phone. I don't really want to pick up the phone. So the phone can be ringing. I can see that it's ringing, but it's an unknown number. I am happy to let it ring, because I just kind of figured that if the person is really like a legitimate person, they might be desperate enough, or they should be desperate enough in this day and age to actually find my website and then just email me instead of calling and calling and calling. Or that I might just tag them back and say, please email me instead. So I don't really want to answer phone calls, even to this date. I think because of all the bad experiences, especially from men, I would have to say. It's not fair, to put it onto them, but yeah, that's one of the things that has happened to me. So yeah, another one is the coming out of like as a divorced person. A lot of people will like to know the juice of your story, like what happened, and to tell the story is kind of like to relieve it. It's relieving the trauma. And it took me a while to figure out how to actually tell people that I'm not going to tell them the story. So some of the scripts that I have is, for instance, things like, I'm happy to share the story with you another day. I say something like that. I'm happy to share with you the story another day. Or I'll say something like, I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't think I want to go into it right now. Or I might say something like, I'll tell you the story one day when I get to know you better. So, but ultimately the bottom line, I realize why people keep asking is really, they just want to make sure you're okay. So what I learned to do is when people ask, then I'll say, hey, I know you're really concerned about me. I really appreciate it. But I just want you to know I'm really, really okay. So that really stops them. In fact, I can even see and sense the relief on their faces, because they don't necessarily want to go into it either. They just ask because they feel that they should ask and they are concerned. So yeah, so these are the two little stories that I have with regards to coming out. So I hope the scripts will be useful to some of you, and it can be used in a different context, right? Like for instance, hey, like I don't really want to talk about this right now, or hey, I'll give you more details later, next time, or whatever, or another day, things like that. Okay, so what about the rest of you who are here? Would you like to share? We have kind of gone around already. Darth Vader, Niche, and SY have already shared. So what does coming out mean to you? And if you have a coming out story that you like to share with the group.
Of course, no pressure. If you don't feel comfortable sharing, it's not an issue at all. It's just because this is a sharing session, so the format is that we usually do pass the baton around. So let's give it a few minutes.
Yeah, if not, we can also talk about something else. You can also private message me if you don't want to share, or if you have a question or comment. If you private message me or SY, we will not read out your name. Just we will not read out your name, just the comment.
Definitely. But I also want to say that, Dr. Martha, your story is super valid, and I feel you on this entire aversion towards calling, this desire to not share beyond what you shared. right? So I think that is something that a lot of people are not entirely confident of doing, not always comfortable with doing, because a lot of people expect that the coming out process must always entail going like, hey, I am XXX, and then you must proceed to give a long background story about what happened, but it's often traumatizing, right? I mean, coming out to yourself is one step, but it doesn't mean that I want to come out to my entire life story to another person. And really it's difficult to actually garner that confidence to actually design a script that's helpful for yourself to tell people, stop, this is the line that I draw, and this is really like, this is good enough, right? So I think definitely Dr. Martha's approach of actually reassuring others was also very much helpful. Sometimes sometimes it's really they really just want to know that you're okay. But other times when people are just being kaypoh, then really are just unfortunately, yes, and we need to stand for ourselves and stop them. And that's actually I think where Vader's point about social support is very helpful sometimes. Right? Sometimes when we can't speak up for ourselves, do we have people around us that can actually speak up for us? Because really, if you want us to re-traumatize every time we come out, it's really very difficult. And I think that's where all the conversations about friends, allies come in. I think that's so important. And yeah, the aversion part, I think another thing that people don't realize is that the common thread that's coming through all our stories often arises from this topic of stigma, right? It's a lot about stigma against divorced individuals, stigma against LGBT folks, stigma against the profession of sexology, right? This idea that, oh, because we don't understand, therefore we're going to stereotype. Because we don't understand, therefore we are going to attack. And therefore we're going to make the lives of many others miserable. And that's why all of us have to come out, right? Because it's, after a while, it's not just stigma against us, it's also our own internalized stigma that makes it so difficult for us to actually share with others this identity or this identity that we possess. And I think that is so important to consider because yeah, as in like ultimately how can we actually overcome these stigma, or how can we actually change the perception of the community surrounding stigma on each of these topics to make the lives of others a better place, easier for everyone else lah. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think for me, when I came out with these scripts, it was because I was emotionally exhausted, sharing again and again, like my divorce story, because people ask, because people are curious. And after a while, I realized that they don't deserve to know. And I realized they were asking because they were kaypoh and they don't really care. And so I feel that they don't deserve. And also, I really didn't feel like going into it again and again for their benefit or for their curiosity or their entertainment. And so over time, I developed these scripts of my own, and and you're right. Nobody teach us these kind of things, what to do, what to say, and I wish it was easier for me, and I wish it is easier for other people to be able to find their voice and to sense, depending on who it is and the situation, because you definitely don't want to be sharing your divorce story like in a party or like at some networking event, or like people pull you aside and like want to know. It's like, screw you, I'm at this networking event. I want to get to know people. I'm here to network. I'm not wanting to be traumatized and things like that. So definitely, as I got older, I got better at sensing and reading people, reading the energy, reading the intention behind it, the unspoken intention. So it's really important that to recognize, like, you don't own anybody anything, you don't owe anybody anything, and your biggest responsibility is to yourself. So take care of yourself. If you don't feel like it, never ever apologize for it. And I think we are such good people pleasers that sometimes we just do things and then afterwards we are like, what was that? Oh, that didn't feel good. Or why did I do that? Or why did that person do that? And then it's actually through the reflection that I started to recognize more and more that I can be different things or say different things in different situations.
Definitely.
So yeah, it is very much like a learning process for me. And I can imagine a lot of people just struggle regardless of what your coming out struggle is. So test with people you trust, test with people that you have confidence is going to have like a more positive outcome. And then And then from there, try it with like more people if you feel like it. And different people will react in a different way. And through like trial and error, through practice, you will actually get better and better at it.
Definitely. But I guess another question that I have for everyone is this idea of at what point can we stop coming out? Because I think there's this imagination. I think at least with the LGBT folks, there's this imagination that the coming out moment is actually a single moment. Right? It's
Mm.
usually imagined as this magical moment where everybody suddenly knows that you are gay, kind of thing. But in reality, is that I think like what we've just shared, it's this continual process of like telling people and then getting re-traumatized in the process, right? So at what point can we actually stop coming out? The question is open to the floor. Anyone can answer. Sorry, I was just triggering everybody's brain at dinner time.
Yeah, so when can you stop coming out? I think you stop coming out when you yourself reconcile that you don't need to. I don't really go, okay, let's say for instance, I'm a counselor. So a lot of people don't really know that I'm divorced. I don't share this publicly. I don't put it on my website. A lot of people don't know this. So I do have clients who come in who say things like, oh, by the way, are you married? Or like, do you have kids? And a lot of times they ask, I don't know why they ask, out of curiosity, for the need of like identifying with me or whatever. So depending on who it is, then I might have to like come out to them to show that I have nothing to hide and build rapport or whatever. But their reaction is something that I have to manage within myself. Like, you mean you're a counselor and you're divorced? Things like that. So I have to brace myself for whatever their reaction is. So I don't feel that I need to come out. So when do we stop coming out? When we feel we don't need to, is my answer.
So it's actually internal point, the internal marker when you're like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also think like, when you truly make peace with yourself, and you have gone through enough, like gone through a lot like me, then you're prepared for whatever. And this is what I noticed, and maybe I'm like talking too much, but this is what I noticed with my clients. Once you have built rapport with them and they trust you, they like you, you can actually pretty much say anything to them and they can actually accept you. So like I have clients who are quite religious, Christian or Catholic, and I'll just share with them, oh, by the way, this is something that I do, like spiritual or whatever. And I can see on their faces that they may not understand, but they still want to learn, they still want to hear. So there's this like receptiveness that happens once the rapport is open. And I over time I realized that actually people are not as judgmental as I think they are, and it is really who you choose to share with that is very, very important, and the way you share. Like if you yourself have any like discomfort within yourself, like any discomfort, like dis-ease inside yourself, like if you're stammering or you are like very unsure, you are actually also making the other person nervous. But if you yourself are comfortable, confident, that you are relaxed about it, then it's much easier for them to also like love and accept you. So what I'm trying to say is sometimes I realize it's not what you say or what you open up. I feel it's the way you do it. And if you are comfortable, then they are comfortable. Like if, I tell them, yeah, I'm divorced. It's been a long time. It was a long time ago. I don't really want to talk about it. Then they'll be like, oh, okay. So like, being able to state your boundaries very gently without like offending anybody.
It's a struggle, right? I think especially in Singapore society, boundary setting is something that we haven't learned very well with in every aspect of our lives. I think it's a constant process of learning lah. Right? A lot about like figuring out like, how can I best communicate this if I don't want to share any further, right? Or how can I best communicate this to the extent that it doesn't hurt the other individual, but at the same time doesn't really traumatize myself. I think that's something that we are all learning even as we are growing older and growing up. So I guess, yeah, I'm gonna open up the question again. So for the others in the rooms, and at what point do we stop coming out? Do we ever stop coming out? I guess that's another question that you could also contemplate about. Sorry, this is like a late night dinner question to poke everyone's brain.
I think just to add one comment here, that's why, coming back to, how I was telling everyone I was divorced, right?
Mm.
In society, after you tell a few people, it goes on the grapevine, everybody finds out. You don't need to come out anymore because everyone finds out. Yeah.
That's another way, right?
Yeah.
The moment that you're publicly out
Yeah.
is actually it's
Yeah.
just part of you, right? So everyone knows it's good. We're good. Definitely. I think of course the level of which we are out and in what sense we are out, I think that's also a very important question, right? I mean, and in some sense being publicly out, having social media to help us be publicly out, having friends to help just share where appropriate to the extent where it's appropriate that we are out. I think that's always helpful in terms of saving you the time, saving you the energy of being re-traumatized and resharing your story every time. But of course, I think there's another aspect that I'm always worried about when we talk about coming out, right? And like, at what point, if we do it publicly, do we get misunderstood with our stories? So what I mean by that is, I'm thinking about polyamory, right? So this is a slightly different area in terms of identity, right? So I think something that I identify with and something that my partner is also aware of is like I identify as polyamorous, right? And this is clear on my dating apps and things like that, right? So one of the things that I did from the start was actually indicate on my profiles that I identify as polyamorous, and that has always resulted in a lot of misconceptions, right? So it's a bit like going like, oh, I'm gay, and then everyone asks you, oh, so you do this kind of gross thing, like in bed or something like that. For polyamory, one of the biggest misconception is, oh, are you just trying to find an excuse for cheating around, right? Or are you just trying to are you just trying to have threesomes in bed? Is it always a triad and things like that? So you're just end up when you're public about coming out, that's the other issue that we have to tackle with, right? The stereotypes and myths that come alongside this coming out of a certain identity. How do we actually negotiate that? Or when coming out publicly, are you able to have your identity accurately represented in your experience? I think that's something that I've always thought about when we talk about public identities and coming out. Mm. But so sorry, that was like a sudden sharing on my part. But
Yeah, so I can imagine it must be so exhausting to educate people. And I also feel that it's not our responsibility to educate people. So what they say, what they ask is very telling of who they are and where they're at. So if the person is like, whatever, like saying certain things that are very offensive or inappropriate, I will just cut the person off, meaning like maybe I'll just immediately block them. I'll just cut them off out of my life, stop responding to them, drop them. Because in my personal life, I actually don't want to spend so much time educating people. It's not my job. I'm not being paid to educate people in my personal life. So what do you do as why when people ask you these kind of questions and then like it's like, one after another, they just see you as this object of fascination and just dump all their, shit onto you, right? I'm sure. So how do you manage them?
do I manage? No, I'm just kidding. I think it depends on how the person asks as well as the intent of it. I think this is also two areas that always come out on my dating profiles: polyamory and me as a pole trickster. So I do pole as a hobby, right? So the thing is that it's always misconceptions. Oh, would you want to dance on my lap? All this kind of thing. I'm like, hell no. So I think it's a lot about filtering how people ask these questions, whether you have the emotional energy to actually tackle these questions. And if you do choose to tackle these questions, are you looking to be passive about the approach, right? So, oh, what do you actually want to know? Or are you looking to actually just actively educate the other person? So I have had instances where I typed long paragraphs explaining to people, pole is not about dancing on people's necks. It's not a stripper job. It's actually I'm doing all these tricks that's basically equivalent to aerial acrobats and things like that. Or polyamory is about like having the ability to love multiple people. It's just a lot of stigma around it. It's not about wanting to fuck everybody and things like that. Don't mind my language, sorry. But so I think it's very circumstantial, and it's also a lot about because ultimately every conversation goes two ways, right? How the other person reciprocate. I have been scolded when I'm publicly out for my identity, mind you, from people from the LGBTQ community. So I mean, the thing about it is, do you have the emotional energy to deal with this? Do you want to deal with this? If you don't want to deal with this, then is coming out actually the best option, right? So I think these are questions that people have to deliberate, and I think that is the other part of the conversation that I think is important to consider for people who don't have to come out in whatever sense of the word, right? What are some of these privileges of not needing to come out, right? Because when people don't have to explain that, oh yeah, I'm in a polyamorous relationship. Like no one goes around explaining that I'm in a monogamous relationship, right? It's always the ones with the open relationships, the ones with the polyamorous relationship that explain. But I mean, what are the privileges that comes with not having to come out? And why is that so important? Why is allyship for people who have to come out so important, right? So even for individuals who have gone through divorces, and why is it so important for people who have not gone through divorce to be by the side of those who have gone through divorce because of the stigma and everything involved, right? So I think back to Dr. Martha's question. Did I ever actually manage it, or how did I manage it? I think circumstantial. I have had really terrible experiences trying to manage it, where I've been blocked, I've been scolded, I've been having to deal with all these things. Then I have had incidences where people are like, yeah, I feel like I learned a lot just having this conversation with you. But I think that is the other part, right? When you are the one who's actually educating the other individual, you start asking yourself, like, why am I being the educator for everybody's lives? Right? I'm not paid to do this. Like kind of what Dr. Mata said, I'm not paid to be a living sample of what polyamory look like. I'm not paid to be a living sample of what the LGBT experience is like. But yet I keep having to do it just because I live those identities. Right? So at what point and I think that also goes back to why I asked that question just now, because I'm so curious as to at what point can we just stop this entire nonsense? Is it when 377 gets repealed for the LGBT community, right? So is it when 377 gets repealed? Is it when we are publicly out on our Facebook profile and everybody knows? Or like at what point can we actually stop? I think it's something that it's just something that I've been wondering for the longest time. Sorry for taking up too much space, but yes, open question to everyone as well. And like two questions, right? As in, at what point do we start coming out? And as far as when coming out, how do you manage other people's responses? I'm curious to hear from everyone else as well. I see Nish is back into thinking mode. Just drilling his dinner.
Come on,
brain out.
Nish, give some answers.
These are very difficult questions that I'm still also trying to figure out. So I guess I can do my best to answer. How do you manage other people's responses? So again, in my experience, coming out to my mom, I had to soften the blow, because I know this is good. It's not something that she's gonna like to hear. So I had to be like, hey, it's okay, like it's perfectly normal. I said those words. I was like, hey, it's perfectly normal. There are other people who's like that. So I had to really emphasize that I'm not abnormal, because that's her perception, but you really have to phrase your words very well to soften the blow. More often than not, it doesn't really work lah. So yeah, that's just me.
I'm sending love from across the world, Nish. I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that coming out is already hard enough, and then you have to take care of other people as well. It's there's no good way to say it. So as somebody who's born quite direct, it can be easier, like I guess just rip the band-aid off. But yeah, I can see how tough it is because you love the person and you don't want to hurt them, and yet at the same time you cannot not speak your truth. So it's really, really very challenging. So I guess to answer that question, as a counselor, how do you manage people's responses? Maybe the best way to manage their responses is not to be over responsible, because that you are not them. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be truthful. You want to be honest. You want to have an authentic relationship. And yet at the same time, you cannot like mollycoddle them so much so that they become kind of like okay, for lack of better word, like, you cannot support them so much so that they become like kind of like crippled because of that, because they have never had a chance to exercise their wings. So I think we take on so much onto ourselves that we actually deprive them of the opportunity to also grow and to grow with you. So this is what I justify to myself when I'm being like radical honest, because yes, it's tough. I am trying to soften the blow, but I cannot be over responsible for you. I cannot over cushion it. And then I cushion it so much until like we you don't know what I'm talking about, right? So I don't think you can really like truly like 100% manage people, but I think what I can do for myself is to manage like my own fears and my own trauma. Like, like people say things to me that is really hurtful, and then like I need to like immediately like take care of myself, like soothe myself, like calm myself down, like give myself like affirmations. I tell myself it's okay, I need to be brave and strong. I can survive this, like like let go of the shock or the trauma. Like basically I can take charge for myself, but I cannot like really control what it is for other people. I'm not sure whether that makes sense. For those of you here who are very quiet, like, feel free to like private message us or ask us questions. It's really supposed to be a very like casual conversation. So does anybody want to add anything to the two questions that SY had? At what point do we come out? I think we have answered it in various ways, but how about the number 2 one, which is how do we manage other people's responses?
This idea of actually prioritizing ourselves first before we actually worry about mollycoddling other people, I think that's so important, because I think people tend to neglect self-care. They forget to actually take care of themselves in the midst of trying to take care of others. It's a recurring problem now. It's a recurring problem that I think as a society, individuals, we're still trying to navigate around. I think another thing that is super important to consider is the kind of resources that are actually available out there presently. I think, Dr. Martha, you released so much important like information for educating individuals of diverse as an individuals regarding diverse experiences, whether it's relating to sex or sexuality or in general. I think this referring people to resources, right? Not taking on the onus on yourself to actually educate other people about all this experience of being stigmatized. I think that's important, because ultimately, I think with a lot of the people who care about me, my experience of being polyamorous or my experience in the LGBT community, oftentimes is actually friends looking into these online resources that they learn more without actually having to traumatize me with their questions. And a lot of the times they know it can be traumatizing, and that's why they give you that space and they don't ask too much. But I think referring people to resources is also helpful. So knowing where the resources are, I think that's so important. Regardless of what identity we are referring to, what kind of identity we are coming out to our friends on, or people around us on. I think
So as you say, the resources, so where are they? we have to mention a few, right? So there's SG Rainbow, which SY and Niche are from. And then on my website, I have like several book lists. So you just Google some keywords and you'll be able to find it. Like for instance, sex education books. For gender identity, I have a book list, or like navigating non-monogamy, I have book lists, or like divorce, or so different book lists that I have on my website. But then what are some of the places that you will recommend, SY? Of course, I think we are probably all familiar with Uga Chaga as a place for counseling for GLBTQIA, and also their text service.
context of this, definitely. I think especially for I think we haven't spoke much about trans-identifying individuals in this community, and I really want to give space to them, shine light on them. But I think the T project is doing fantastic work to support the trans in identifying community as well as trans befrienders, right? So actually the kind of giving space for them to actually make friends, giving space for them to actually have a safe person to talk to. I think the T project, June's work has been like so super important, right? So I mean, there's a lot of other community groups that are actually also in place for the LGBT community. I'm thinking Heart Weaver, Sione, Aware has actually done starting to develop more and more conversations about LGBTQ community. I'm thinking AFA, all the HIV conversations, stigma around AFA, HIV and STIs and things like that. I'm thinking Gay Health actually, which is basically a subsidiary of AFA. What else? Nish, what am I missing?
Uh,
Greenhouse,
Bisu,
Healing Circle, Jajaka, right?
yeah.
Intersectionality of LGBT and religion, Free Community Church. What else am I missing, Nish?
Did you say indignation?
No, I haven't mentioned Indignation, Pink Dot, right? So Pink Dot, and if I don't remember wrongly, Pink Dot, Sione, and Proud, they actually have a list of counselors and psychologists that are LGBTQ affirming. Right? That's so important. Reach out to them if you need to speak to someone. I think Congregation, so which is under Uga Chaga as well, has a list, right? So reach out to these resources, please. You're not alone. And I think that it's so important to realize you're not alone, whatever you are going through. We have had community members who have reached out to us with their personal stories, and I think we've been so grateful that community members have been willing to share their stories with us. But please, please know you're not alone. We are here for you. Because I think the worst feeling about coming out is when you realize that there's no one there for you, lah, right? Just feeling that and like you have to deal with this entire battle by yourself. I think Darth Vader spoke a bit about this element of social support just now, right? I think for the LGBTQ community, people think that, oh yeah, 368 is gone, we're done, we're good, right? No, it's not the end of the battle. There's a lot more
Yeah.
interpersonal issues that we're still dealing with and stigma that we're still
Okay,
dealing with.
so we have a comment. So someone is saying, don't know how it happened, but I don't really like wearing clothes. When I search about it, I learned a new word, nudism, which people judge and treat us like abnormal. Is it a bad nature of mine? So the thing is, if you walk on the streets without clothes, then this is voyeurism. You know, people can see what you're doing, and it's illegal in Singapore. So if you don't wear clothes at home, there's nothing wrong with that. It's your home. Just make sure your neighbors can't see it, because in Singapore, apparently your neighbors see you naked at home is illegal also. So just close your curtains and be naked. So there's nothing wrong with not liking to wear clothes. Just be naked at home is fine. But outside of Singapore, outside of your house, yeah, it's illegal. Then you can go, to places that is more open. Like for instance, there are nude beaches in Australia, Sydney, there's one. And then there are nude resorts that you can go to. There are nude cruises you can go to. So there are places that are safe and not illegal, that you can just be, not wearing clothes. Or you can just go to like a, is it like sauna, jacuzzi, sauna, right? There are like all these Japanese sauna places that you can go, walk around without clothes, and people there are also not wearing clothes. And depending on their comfort level, they can be down to their underwear or something like that, or with a towel. But essentially, that can also give you an opportunity to walk around and just feel comfortable with your skin. So I'm not sure. Okay, so someone is commenting. Sometimes I feel, what's wrong with me? I've even cried and feel guilty at being nudist. So yeah, I feel for you, because there are not many places in Singapore that you can be nude safely. So I'm not sure where's the guilt coming from, because there are people who feel very comfortable doing like nude sunbathing and all that. It's just that it's very unfortunate that in Singapore it's like so strict. I think sometimes when a society is so strict, it actually causes more problems, where things that are supposed to be like completely natural becomes very forbidden, and therefore there's this element of kink that comes into it, all the more because you don't want me to do, all the more I want to do. So save up your money. The world is opening up. You can always go to places that is really free and permissive. And also there's always a possibility of migrating. Cross fingers, there are actually many safe places around the world. The world is really our oyster. Singapore is just a very, very, very small place in the whole scheme of where the world is, in my opinion. So does anybody else have anything else to add? So I know Darth Vader has to leave by 8, by the way. Any last words? Maybe Darth Vader?
My meeting got cancelled.
Oh, your meeting got cancelled. Okay, you can stay. Any words?
Any final
Advice?
thoughts, anyone? On how to tackle coming out and the issues arising from coming out based on your experiences. Anyone?
Okay, I actually want to say that for the LGBTQIA people, that when was it? Like recently I did an event where this person actually said that can't really come out because they're dependent on their family, they have to live with their family, their schooling and things like that. So there is the travel project where they have this tagline, it gets better. And it's true, it might feel like this the worst thing in your life, worst thing that's happening right now, that you cannot be fully yourself, that you cannot come out. Maybe a little bit like our nudist friend also, you feel that you cannot really be yourself, but in reality you are not as alone as you think. There are a lot of people who may be stuck or feel stuck, and it could be like just for a time, like it's circumstantial. And like hold on, because sometimes coming out may not be the best thing there and then. So it could be later on, it could be when you find your wings, you find your feet, you find your independence, you have your own money, you have your own job, you have your own place. So it may not be like you can't get everything that you want now, like now, so sometimes being patient about it and being strategic about it. So the whole premise of travel project, like it can get better, it gets better, the world is getting better, Singapore is becoming better. And this whole thing around like don't give up, like don't just, because it's like that is shit, so life is shit, like that's just like this whole generalization versus like, okay, like being really like this is what's happening and this is what I don't like and this is what I can do about it and I can't do this about it, but I can do this in the moment. So I guess that was why I was coming with this advice, like you can be naked at home, you can like go to the sauna and be naked, and you can go overseas and be naked, things like that.
Definitely. I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. Coming out is actually also, I think there are privileges attached to being able to come out. Right? Not everybody can come out. Right? That's the reality. There are a lot of circumstances that I myself have experienced that coming out is not safe. Coming out is not strategic, and coming out can actually pose a long-term implication on us. Right? Just a while before this year, and like coming out could be you could be illegally implicated, even though they say that it cannot actually be enforced. Right. So I think coming out is a privilege. These are probably my last words for today as well. Coming out is a privilege. But for those, I think another word of advice for community members who don't have to come out, right? Then if your friends, your loved ones do choose to come out to you, please know that it's actually a very difficult step, right? And please try and be there for them. If you don't know how to be there for them, reach out to the community resources that we talked about, right? Because I think learning to support individuals who come out is something that we don't talk about enough either, right? And we take it for granted that we all know how to do it, but the reality is we don't, right? We don't actually know how to do it. How to support others who have actually come up to us? How do we actually be an effective social support for them? Okay, I'm talking too much, but that's my last words for today. Come, anyone else?
Yeah, I think it's very good what you just said about supporting someone. So you don't really have to, like sometimes when someone shares something with you, you don't know what to say. Really it's not about you. So it's really important to just acknowledge them and thank them for sharing, and then ask them what support do you need. That's all. You don't really have to do so much. You don't have to turn it into, I know someone like that. Oh my God, I'm also like that. You know what? All these are really turning it into yourself and it's irrelevant, because let the spotlight be on them, stay on them, be with them, be there for them. Don't make it about you. So I think that it's like a big thing. I think a lot of times we want to like make them feel okay, but it's actually less is more. Less is more. This is I guess my last words. So anybody has any last words? Because these are really our last words.
Naveda, Nish, or any other community members who are on this call? Nish, any last words?
I guess don't come out if you're ready, and always have your support system by your side, because that will help. Because I know you helped me a lot. So yeah.
Okay, so so for those of you who are still watching this, just know that if you do identify as a gay, bisexual, male, SG Rainbow does that. Maybe SY can do the last can do that shout out, and anybody else who wants support around sexuality can always come to me. I'm available for private sessions, and I do have Ask Me Anything in November. So SY, maybe you want to share just like some last words about like what is SG Rainbow actually?
For sure. Thanks, Dr. Martha, for actually shining light to my organization. So, SG Rainbow is actually a non-governmental, non-profit organization supporting individuals who identify as gay, bisexual, and queer men. But honestly speaking, these days our work is actually expanding across the LGBTQIA plus spectrum. I think that will be an accurate representation of our work. And a lot of the things we do are mostly oriented around social events, right? So creating social bonds amongst community members, but at the same time also raising awareness on difficult topics. So I think the series with Dr. Martha that we've been doing, a lot of conversations about sex, a lot of conversations about sexuality, these conversations about coming out and things like that is part of our awareness programs. And Dr. Martha has very, very kindly co-organized a lot of these events with us, for us, to raise awareness and support the LGBTQIA plus community as well. But that's mainly what we do. We actually have an upcoming camp in December. I think it was Nish, correct me if I'm wrong, 2nd to 3rd December. That is intended for LGBTQ men aged 18 to 30. Did I get that right, Nish? I think
18
I think I
to
got it.
34.
Yeah, 34. Check out our Instagram, Facebook page, our social media pages, and all this information are actually out there. Sorry, I'm speaking at 4 a.m. time zone right now. That's why my brain is a bit foggy. And we also got we actually have another sugar and spice series coming up with Dr. Martha as well in November, talking about sexual violence. I know we keep choosing the very difficult topics. Last month was sex and aging. Now we're talking about sexual violence. This week is coming up. But I think these are super important topics that we need to talk about, because there's so little conversations and we don't actually know how to manage these kind of difficult conversations and experiences. So yeah, that's us. Sorry, I babbled too much again. Nish, do you have anything to add? Did I miss anything?
That's it. So we hope you guys check SG Rainbow out and follow us on Instagram, SG_Rainbow, and TikTok and Facebook. Yeah.
Nish is doing so much important work for our programs and publicity and things like that. It's like,
Ish is doing just as much. So just check us out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you everybody. I'll stop the recording. Thank you for coming. We can continue to chat after.